Debating the issues one-on-one. We talk with the moderator of today's debate between John Cox and Gavin Newsom.
I'm running for re-election because I love representing this community.
City Councilwoman Lori Zaff faces a challenge in District 2. Learn more about the two women running for this pivotal seat.
SDSU West, yes on Measure G.
Measure G is as bad as it gets.
Soccer City or SDSU West? A flood of TV ads will try to sway voters in the weeks ahead. And the city of San Diego considers a new approach to picking up the trash. Kpbs Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. In 1 month, San Diego and the nation will vote in the 2018 general election. Tonight, much of our show is dedicated to the choices voters will make in the weeks ahead, from new city leaders to the Mission Valley Stadium site and the gas tax. But first, the race for governor. Earlier today, I spoke to KQED's Scott Schaefer about the debate he moderated today with John Cox and Gavin Newsom. Scott Schaefer, welcome. So today's forum was the first and only scheduled opportunity for California voters to hear Gavin Newsom and John Cox debate the issues. How did they do?
Well, we had a format that enabled a lot of give and take. It was very much open-ended. It was a conversation. It wasn't the kind of League of Women Voters format where you have 30 seconds to rebut and a minute to answer. And so I think it enabled us to get more deeply into issues. We had about a 7-minute conversation, for example, about housing. And we did that with him on immigration and a number of other issues. I wish we'd had an hour and a half because there were a lot of issues we did not get to, like health care, for example. But I think that listeners would have gotten a pretty good sense of how these two candidates are different in terms of their values and their policies and how they would be different as governor.
So what were the clearest points of contrast between Newsom and Cox, and where are they not so far apart?
Well, they're not so far apart in terms of what the problem is with housing. I think everyone agrees, and they agree, that there is not enough housing to meet the demand in California. They both agree that there are frivolous lawsuits and local opposition to housing projects that often either delays or kill projects. John Cox would like to get rid of CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. Gavin Newsom, I think, would like to reform it and work with local governments to kind of create incentives for building more housing and disincentives for killing housing. So I would say that that's an area that they were relatively similar. Gavin Newsom, I think, had a lot more specificity in his answers about housing and other things as well. In terms of where they disagree, I mean, certainly immigration. John Cox supports the wall on the border down there in San Diego. He is very much opposed to sanctuary state or sanctuary city policies and says he would get rid of them, although it's a little unclear how he would do that. He would have to go to the ballot, really.
You know, a border wall is necessary. I live in San Diego, and it's had some effect there. But
the Republican mayor of San Diego opposes the wall.
Yeah. Maybe so, but a lot of people think it's the right thing to do. Having said that, I am not in favor of checking papers in classrooms or on people's yards and going around and taking people out who are obeying the law.
What about ICE in courthouses?
I want to make sure that if somebody is involved in criminal activity and they're illegally, they should be removed from the state.
Yeah, look, let me just say this about the wall. The wall is a monument to stupidity. The wall is intended to divide this country. John may be familiar with this. I hope others are as well. 40% of people here without documentation came here because they overstayed their visa. Many flew. This notion of a 6th century solution to a 21st century problem is ludicrous from my humble perspective. As it relates to sanctuary, there certainly should be sanctuary when people are accessing the court system.
Now, another lively part of the discussion today came early on when the conversation steered towards housing, and we want to play another soundbite from that exchange in the forum for our audience.
We lost redevelopment years ago, and we never came up with successor agencies. We have specific goals on enhanced infrastructure financing districts in the state, taking advantage of these opportunity zones. Again, what you heard from John is an illusory strategy where he criticizes and identifies problems, but with all due respect, doesn't have the details and the strategies to actually solve
What
it.
you heard from Gavin is more government, more plans to pay out money from government, tax credits, plans for government financing. But if you don't really attack the cost of building, the delays in building, the litigation, the lawsuits, the impact fees that are put on housing in the state, if you don't do that, what you're going to do is institutionalize these high rents.
And wrapping up, Mr. Schaefer, you have moderated other forums and debates. How would you say overall the tone of today's forum compared to others that you've moderated?
Well, I mean, these are two people who I don't think know each other very well and don't like each other very much. I mean, even before the debate started, like a minute before we went live on the radio, John Cox was complaining that there's only one debate, and Newsom was saying, well, you cancel. You know, they were back and forth bickering. So there was a lot of contentiousness. I do think once they were on the air and we went live, they were fairly civil. I think they didn't interrupt each other. They didn't call each other names very much. So I think it was intense. The stakes, I think, were somewhat high, although, it was on radio. And I think the Newsom campaign knew that any mistakes they made would be, minimized by the fact that there wasn't video. But that said, I think it was useful. I think it was somewhat entertaining and informative.
Excellent job. Scott Schaefer, KQED Politics and Government Senior Editor. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You can listen to the full hour-long debate online along with the special call-in broadcast with listener reaction and analysis. We set up a link for you on our homepage at kpbs.org. For San Diego City Council, a hotly contested race is in District 2. It stretches from Point Loma to Pacific Beach. And KPBS reporter Andrew Bowen says Democrats are hoping to unseat the Republican incumbent.
I'm running for re-election because I love representing this community.
Lori Zaff was first elected in 2010. Since then, housing has gotten a lot more expensive in San Diego. Zaff says the city needs to encourage developers to build smaller homes.
When I was younger, it was called a studio apartment. I lived in a studio apartment. And so we need a lot of those, a lot of millennials, a lot of seniors. A nice, large studio apartment is, all they want or need.
In her 8 years on council, she's accomplished almost nothing.
Jen Campbell is a physician running to unseat Zaff.
I love San Diego.
She's a Democrat and says developers should be expected to shoulder more of the cost of subsidized affordable housing. But she also wants to speed up permitting and allow developers to build more.
It's supply and demand. We have a lot more need for housing than we have housing. And that stems from a lot of different things. But it's interesting how it's all so interconnected with the availability of housing, the price of housing, the problems with homelessness.
Democrats see Campbell as their best chance of getting a 6-vote supermajority on the city council. That would allow them to override vetoes from Republican Mayor Kevin Faulconer. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Our city council coverage will continue throughout the week. Tomorrow, KPBS will have an interview with District 4 candidate Monica Montgomery. Beginning today, iNewsSource is launching a Follow the Money series on the 5 ballot measures voters will decide in November. iNewsSource reporters Jill Castellano and Brad Racino kick off the series with a look at the effort to repeal a state gas tax increase.
Jill.
Brad.
This episode is about Prop 6, and you are the expert. You spent weeks researching and writing the definitive story on the history, people, and funding on this topic. For people at home who know absolutely nothing about Prop 6, give us a rundown.
Well, last year, California passed Senate Bill 1. It raised gas prices by 12 cents a gallon and added a new vehicle registration fee on cars. The money is supposed to be used to fund transportation projects. Now, Prop 6 is an attempt to undo SB 1, and it started locally here in San Diego with Carl DeMaio.
And reminder on DeMaio, he's a former San Diego City councilman who now has his own conservative radio talk show.
Yeah, and he's been rallying his listeners behind the gas tax repeal for over a year now. And you and I caught up with him in August.
It's a very regressive tax. It's unfair to working families. hits them pretty hard. And it comes at a time when the politicians have shown that we can't trust them to fix our roads. They always divert and raid the funds.
Okay, so what about the side that wants the tax? What do they have to say?
Well, they say that the money is needed to fund road repair and transportation projects, and that's actually good for working families in the long run. And by the way, San Diego has already gotten $1 billion in transportation funding through this tax, and that would all disappear if Prop 6 passes. We interviewed State Assemblyman Todd Gloria about this in August.
If Proposition 6 passes and SB 1 is repealed, you will see an elimination of $5 billion worth of annual improvements across the state of California. Think about what that means locally here in San Diego.
So this gas tax repeal started with a local radio talk show. How did it grow to become the statewide ballot measure that's so important to the Republican Party?
Well, it's a pretty unique and interesting story, which has made it really fun to report on. Carl DeMaio has organized thousands of volunteers around the state of California to help support getting this on the ballot. They're raising money, they're collecting signatures, and it worked. More than a fifth of the almost 1 million signatures to get Prop 6 on the ballot came from San Diego.
And this is the part where we get into the money. You said in your story that Prop 6 is a true grassroots campaign. What do you mean by that?
Well, more than 25,000 people have donated to DeMaio's repeal campaign, and a third of them have donated $100 or less. So these are people from all around California who are pitching in a few dollars, and it's adding up to millions. But the campaign is getting help from a few big names, too.
Like who?
Like some of the most high-profile candidates running for office in California this year, like John Cox.
He's the Rancho Santa Fe businessman running for governor.
He's given more than $250,000 to repeal groups. And there's Diane Harkey.
She's running for a competitive congressional seat in a district that's covering parts of San Diego and Orange counties.
She's given about $35,000 to repeal groups.
But DeMaio's group isn't the only committee here.
Right. There are 4 political committees, and together around California, they've raised about $5 million.
And what about the groups that want the gas tax? How much money have they raised?
There are 5 groups opposing Prop 6. They've raised way more money than the supporters have. We're talking $32 million, so they have a huge advantage.
But where's their money coming from?
It's mostly coming from labor unions and corporations, construction companies. We've actually seen 11 of these groups donate $1 million or more each to fund this opposition campaign.
Because you're the ultimate campaign finance guru, you've created a tool for people to use to learn more about the funding behind Prop 6. Talk for a second about that.
Yeah, it's a database where you can look up anyone who's donated money to support or oppose the gas tax repeal and how much they've given, from $100 to millions of dollars. You can find it at data.inewssource.org.
Jill Castellano, thank you.
Brad Racino, thank you.
Tomorrow, Brad and Jill will talk about the Soccer City and SDSU West, the plans to redevelop the former Qualcomm Stadium site. iNewsSource is an independently funded nonprofit partner of Kpbs. San Diego voters are being inundated with ads for the Mission Valley Stadium initiatives. Kpbs reporter Eric Anderson says backers of each plan are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to sway voters.
SDSU West, yes on Measure G.
Measure G is as bad as it gets.
Local television viewers are seeing a lot about the future of Mission Valley's stadium site.
Economic opportunities.
San Diego State University backers want to allow the school to buy 132 acres of the land to build an auxiliary campus.
Measure G will transform the Mission Valley Stadium property into a world-class education and research center, with a stadium for football and soccer.
SDSU West has raised just over $2 million since the beginning of 2017, and boosters tout the university's vision for the site. School officials engaged an architectural firm that designed what the multi-billion-dollar makeover would end up looking like.
For our next generation of college graduates,
SDSU West's Katie Temple says the renderings show housing, offices, commercial space, a stadium, and a river park.
This is the best initiative for the region of San Diego because it will grow the campus in an open and transparent process, and it will also grow the economy, which means that it will benefit the entire area for years and years to come.
SDSU West secures a home for the Aztecs football team, and university officials promise to use public-private partnerships so they won't have to spend public dollars.
Thank you all.
U.S. soccer star Landon Donovan is a member of the Soccer City team behind Measure E.
Hey, you want to see the future?
Their ad shows a virtual reality view of the development and a sports stadium.
Whoa. How much does this cost? Won't cost you a dime.
Want to see what you get with Measure G?
Yeah. Sorry, is this broken?
That ad and others will likely saturate local airwaves over the next few weeks. Soccer City's supporters have raised just over $5 million to help convince voters their development is the one to support. Okay. Developer Nick Stone says the measure moves quickly to replace the city's aging stadium.
Measure E finally does something with the asset that is burning $6 million a year of the city's money. It converts it into something that creates hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of value for the city, the county, and the schools.
Soccer City supporters hope to leverage a multi-billion-dollar redevelopment blueprint to lure a Major League Soccer franchise to San Diego.
Major League Soccer in San Diego is a perfect fit.
Soccer City proposes buying and leasing about 230 acres of city-owned land to build a sports stadium, entertainment district, housing, commercial space, and a river park.
You'll see us on TV, again, talking about the fact that Measure E is $200 million better than every other plan out there, and it's the only plan that's going to happen quickly, and it doesn't cost taxpayers a penny, and that should be the key takeaway. There's something great for everybody here, and it doesn't cost anybody anything.
That's not the opinion of two wealthy Mission Valley developers and property owners. Sudbury Properties and H.G. Fenton are both well-connected politically.
The last thing Mission Valley needs is more traffic. But that's exactly what we'll get with Measure E.
And they've raised nearly $3.4 million since the beginning of 2017 to pay for their media ads blasting Soccer City.
Say no to the Soccer City ripoff.
The two developers both have ties to the SDSU West measure, and their spokesperson, Laura Fink, says they'll reach out to voters on traditional commercial television and online sources.
We want to educate voters, we want to inform them, because we know that when people find out about what's inside this so-called Soccer City measure, that voters run away.
And there is one more player in the game. San Diego State University cannot legally advocate for the SDSU West initiative, but the school would love to get access to the Mission Valley Stadium site.
I will serve San Diego.
The university is buying ad time for an image campaign that will compete for airtime during this political season.
I move San Diego.
School officials say it's common for SDSU to run fall public relations campaigns.
I run San Diego.
The ad sports an I Am SDSU theme aimed at emphasizing the school's positive impact on the community.
Yo soy SDSU.
We are San Diego!
The city of San Diego's registered voters make their decision in early November. The measure with the most votes, over 50%, would prevail. It's possible that voters reject both measures, and that would leave the city to figure out the future of the Mission Valley site. Eric Anderson, Kpbs News.
Kpbs is a service of San Diego State University. NPR independently reviewed this story for Balance. Soon, voters will have their ballots in their hands. Vote-by-mail ballots go out today. To help you make an informed decision, Kpbs has created an online voter guide. Kpbs reporter Claire Tragesser explains how it works.
The Kpbs Voter Guide, officially called Voter's Edge California, is customized according to where you live. When you type in your address or zip code, it will show you the candidates and propositions on your individual ballot. Go to kpbs.org/vote and enter your address. Then click on the November ballot guide. There you can see more information about each candidate. For example, let's look at the county supervisor's race. You can see the candidates, their experience, top 3 priorities, and who supports the candidate. You can also see candidates' answers to questions we pose to them. If some information is blank, that's because the candidate chose not to participate. The guide also has information about state and local ballot measures and where you go to vote. To access the voter guide, just head to our website at kpbs.org/vote. Claire Tragesser, Kpbs News.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, dire warnings on the damage that climate change will bring unless drastic action is taken. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on Kpbs.
Two, one, ignition, liftoff.
The latest rocket launch by SpaceX put on a show last night across Southern California. The company's Falcon rocket carried a satellite from Argentina into space. And even though the launch happened near Santa Barbara, the plume could be seen as far away as here in San Diego. After the launch, the rocket booster returned to Vandenberg Air Force Base. It's the first time SpaceX landed one of its reusable rockets on the West Coast. San Diego will see a steady weather pattern this week, and the deserts will be cooler than normal. Erin Calandra has details in tonight's forecast.
I hope you enjoyed your Monday as we kick off the new work week. And our weather, well, it's about average in San Diego, but once you move into those interior areas, the deserts and also the mountains, it's a bit cooler than average. We have a big dip in the jet stream. That's allowing all this cool air to rush down from Canada. We're seeing some snow in the mountains and also some spotty showers across the deserts. Here we are taking a look at what's going on across San Diego County. Not much. It's quiet. You'll notice a couple of clouds around early on along the coast and then clearing out. So Oceanside at 56 for the low tonight, Chula Vista at 59, Mount Laguna cooler at 45. Tonight in the metro area, you'll notice those clouds building and a temperature of 62 for the low. Here's the jet stream and that big chilly air shooting down from the north, keeping things pretty cool. But where we are, it's going to remain pretty pleasant. Temperature is actually around average. It's been above average for so long. We're finally seeing the temperatures we should see. So Oceanside at 72 and sunny. Chula Vista also at 72 and San Diego reaching 73 with plenty of sunshine. Mount Laguna at 60 and Borrego Springs. Finally, a break from the heat at 88. Now, we are watching a couple of things on the East Coast, including Michael. It is now a Category 1 down in the Caribbean, expected to reach Florida, the Panhandle, by Wednesday, with drenching downpours. Could potentially be a Category 2 at that time, but we're keeping an eye on it. Here on the West Coast, well, it's going to become a bit cooler. Could see perhaps a shower in the mountains over the weekend. So along the coast, looking good. Mostly sunny this whole week. Temperatures will get a bit cooler by Thursday, down to 70, but then we rebound Friday, nice at 75. Inland, it'll get to 75 on Thursday. The coolest day of the week. By Friday, we're at near 80. Plenty of sunshine, looking good. And here we are in the mountains, cool Tuesday at 60 degrees, down to the 50s throughout the rest of the week, but staying nice and sunny. And in the deserts, look at that. Temperatures will be in the 80s all week, and our lows even dipping down to the 50s. For KPBS News, I'm Erin Calandra. Back to you.
Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh participated in a ceremonial swearing in at the White House tonight. The newest justice formally began his job over the weekend after a successful confirmation vote. He will replace retired Justice Anthony Kennedy and will hear his first case tomorrow. Nearly 3 months after it started, CAL FIRE has identified the cause of the Ferguson fire. Investigators say an overheated car touched dry grass on July 13th near Yosemite National Forest. Over a period of several weeks, the fire burned 150 square miles, and 2 firefighters died on the job. There was also a large economic impact due to the closure of Yosemite National Park. CAL FIRE estimates it spent $115 million on firefighting cost. San Diego County is seeking advice on how to spend money it receives for mental health care. A series of public forums, including Wednesday in El Cajon and next Monday in the Lincoln Park area. Those who want to take part must register at listentosandiego.org. The County Health and Human Services Agency says it wants to hear from those with experience in behavioral health, school violence, mental illness, and substance abuse, and their families. San Diego City Council members have decided against a revamp of the city's trash collection system. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen has more.
Right now, homes and businesses can choose from a list of companies to pick up their trash, no matter where they live in San Diego. This allows for competition, but critics say it's not very efficient. A report commissioned by the city said a system of districts, each with one waste hauler, would cut down on the number of dump trucks on the roads and the distances they travel. It said that would save money on road maintenance and cut greenhouse gas emissions. But the city council balked, saying they could get the same results by tweaking the current system. Councilman David Alvarez says the goals will still be to reduce pollution.
And so with this item that we have now in these franchise agreements, we attempt to do that by increasing requirements of green vehicles on a very much expedited time frame than we had before.
The council also voted to charge trash collectors an extra $1 for every ton of waste they transport. That revenue is supposed to fix the damage dump trucks can cause to city streets. Andrew Bowen, Kpbs News.
Now here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the Kpbs newsroom. California's lobster season is underway. We'll take a look at how tariffs between the U.S. and China are impacting the industry. And the San Diego International Film Festival begins later this week. Midday Edition will have a talk with the festival's CEO about the films being showcased. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.